You sound amazing, and so okay. Are you excited to be here? Are you at least excited to be here? Awesome. Hey, I'm excited to teach for us today, and then maybe here in a few minutes when you leave, I hope you'll be excited that I taught. Can we make that agreement? Okay, so we're just kind of halfway through this point in our series called The Kingdom, and so we're talking about the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, or Jesus just sometimes just said, okay, the kingdom. And if you're our guest today, thanks so much for jumping in with us. I'll try to bring you up to speed pretty quickly in a couple of sentences, but we started talking about the kingdom and what it is and where it is. And then Matt, and I don't know if some of you aren't paying attention, Matt, this guy right here, is our worship pastor, okay? So that's Matt. Matt taught in week 2, just kind of talking through this idea of what happens when we choose a bad king, okay? By the way, let me just say this. Matt is doing an incredible job. He's just an awesome person. And hold on. No. Hey, let's keep him humble. He's continuing to build an amazing team, but listen, I know that for the 100 people that walk through here today, somebody can play an instrument, and he's looking to build the team, so that's your guy, okay? So Matt talked about what does it look like to choose a bad king. And then I came back and I said, okay, as King Jesus, what kind of king is he? And we walked through that, and then we spent a week on who are the people that Jesus invites into his kingdom. What are the citizens, like who are the people that make up the kingdom? And then last week, Dan, our student pastor, came and he taught for us, and he talked about, okay, now that you're in the kingdom, what does it actually look like to live in the kingdom of Jesus? And it's not a matter of outward appearances and conformity, but it's really a matter of transformation, like in your heart, okay? And so today I want to look at a story Jesus told. You can find it in the book of Mark chapter 4. So if you open to the middle, turn right, you get to Jesus, Matthew, Mark, okay, Mark chapter 4. And it's a story about how the kingdom actually works in your and my individual heart. Okay, and how do good things and best things and even godly things actually grow in your life and my life? And so this idea that the kingdom, okay, and we just sang about it in that last song, like there's a day when the kingdom's going to fully come and we're going to realize it, and I don't really understand how all that works and, you know, just how amazing it is, but the kingdom, Jesus taught, could be accessed here and now, like it's available to you today. That's a complete mindset shift for everybody. And so when Jesus talked about it, hey, I have come to give you a life. And you can read this on the lobby wall out there. Hey, Jesus came to give us a life that's full and abundant, and you can have that right here today in this moment. And your life, like one of the benefits of living this life in the kingdom is that it could be different, right? Like your life could actually change. Right now, here today, you could be a changed person. And the question is, well, how do we actually change and grow and see the results that we actually want to see? And so Jesus told several parables. He told these short stories. I think that what we're going to look at today is the first one, maybe, that Jesus actually told. And it is what life could actually look like if you lived it with him and not apart from him on your own, but if you lived it with him in the kingdom. Now, when we get to the end of this story, you're going to see this for yourself, but I'll give you the punchline away right now. The responsibility, okay, is not on Jesus. Okay, the responsibility here is not even actually on me and what I'm going to say in the next few minutes. The responsibility is not actually found in the words that are even spoken or that we read here. The responsibility for what happens is on the hearer. Okay, it's on you and it's on me with what we do here. And so I just want to take 10 seconds, if we could, and I want us just to hit pause and for you to maybe have a moment to say a prayer where you are that would be just very simply this, okay, God, would you open my heart today to actually receive your words, okay? And maybe just say that in your own way. Mark chapter 4, verse 3, this is Jesus. He says, hey, listen, consider the sower who went out to sow. As he sowed, some seed fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured it. Other seed fell on a rocky ground where it didn't have much soil, and it grew up quickly. But since the soil wasn't deep, when the sun came up, it was scorched, and it had no root. It just withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns came up and choked it, and it didn't produce fruit. Still other seed fell on good ground, and it grew up. It produced fruit that increased 30, 60, 100 times. And then he said, okay, anyone who has ears to hear, listen. And I would say all of us have ears. Are we good with that? Yeah. And it's just his way of saying, hey, if you just heard what I said, pay attention to it, add it to your life, and things could be different. So here's a farmer, Jesus says, and maybe he's holding a bag of seed, and maybe he's just kind of holding it in one arm, and he takes his other hand, and he reaches in there, and he grabs some seed, and he's just turning around. He's just throwing it wherever he can, all right? Just grab it and throw it, and it's kind of like, listen, I have a small yard at my place. This is how I'll do weed and feed here before long. Anybody else is like, I don't need equipment. I don't need anything. I just hold that bag the best I can. I grab it, and I just throw it. And some of it lands on my driveway. Some of it lands on the sidewalk. Some of it hits the house, and then some of it actually ends up in the yard. And Jesus goes, okay, listen, some fell on a hard path, and it just never had a chance. Some fell on a rocky or like gravel and showed some life, but just never could actually take root. Some of it fell on decent ground, it looks like, but there was just a lot of other stuff actually growing there as well. It got crowded out, and he said some fell on good soil, and that one seed actually it multiplied. And then he gets to the end, and he goes, okay, well, thank you for listening, and that's it. I have nothing more. Good luck and good day. And then he walks away. Okay. See, Jesus rarely explained his stories to people. He usually just told the story, and then it would say, hey, listen, if you want to hear it and do something with it, great, that'd be awesome. But he usually just walked away. But on this particular occasion, his disciples and some who are closest to him pulled him aside, and they said, okay, cool story, but what are you talking about? We don't get it. And so Jesus explains it, and he actually gives us definition to three of the important things. One, he said, the sower's God, okay? And just like that farmer, okay, God works like that. The seed, that's his word. And just like that seed, the truth works like that. And then the soil, okay, that's going to be people. That's the hearts and the lives of people. And so one farmer, same seed, different soils, different results. If you jump down to verse 14, Jesus starts to explain it a little bit. And he says this, the sower, or God, sows the word. Okay, like seeds are falling on all of the different soils, truth is just falling all over people. And it just sounds so simple, but I think we have to start here because it's just absolutely crucial to everything else, understanding that all people hear truth. I mean, at least according to this story right here, like truth is just falling all over everybody. Like, hey, this is what a better life actually looks like, or this is how life actually works best for you, or you need to make some changes and you need to go this way. And you say, well, how does God do that? Well, he does it in a setting like this sometimes. All morning you've been hearing truth, whether it's through a song or through a prayer, or we're going to read these scriptures, and you go, hey, okay, that is truth. You're receiving that. Or you're reading your Bible, and you come across something, and you go, oh, that actually makes sense, or I've never heard that before, or I didn't know that. Some of you get in truth in the circumstances of your life, okay? Some of you were 18 years old, right? And you didn't like the rules your parents were making, and you're like, I'm out of here. I have to put up with that. No one's going to tell me what to do, and so you join the Navy. And how'd that work out, okay? That didn't work out very well. Maybe you got kicked out of that. You landed in jail, and in that process, you maybe had a moment where you go, okay, I think God maybe is actually trying to tell me something. Or we have friends, okay, and they're all saying the same thing, like, hey, you need to do this, okay? And sometimes that truth gets into our life, and sometimes it doesn't. But all people, at least according to this story, hear some truth. And we have different responses to that truth in our life, and this is what Jesus explains in 15. Some of us are like, okay, the word that gets sown on the path. When they hear it, okay, we hear it, immediately Satan comes and takes away the word sown in them. So again, God's been throwing out truth, and some of us respond to it like a hard path does to the seed. The truth hits it, and then it just lays there, and it's gone. I mean, it's like seed hitting the concrete. It lands, and it dies. It gets crushed, okay, it gets blown away. A bird eats it. It never had a chance. Jesus goes, some people respond to truth that way. It just sits there. Or Jesus even credits Satan, okay? Somehow he has the ability to cloud a person's mind or make you resist. Some of you walked in here and you were pre-resistant already, okay? You were distracted by other stuff. He just kind of picks it off because it's just sitting there. And nothing good happens because it's not being used. Maybe you've had this experience years ago. Some people gave me a very significant gift card for the Foot Locker, okay? And I was pretty excited about that because I love sports gear and I like things and shoes and all that kind of thing. So I roll in there after I get this gift card, and I think I picked up a pair of shorts, but basketball season's just around the corner, and I was like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to come back. I'm going to get some really good stuff I need for basketball. And apparently I waited so long, like a whole year later, when I go in there to use the gift card, maybe you've experienced this before or not, you know what happened. Because of inactivity on that card, they were deducting money off of my balance. Isn't that the biggest racket ever? Some of you ever experienced this? You've invited someone out to coffee, you're at Starbucks, and you're like, you know what, I got plenty of rewards, let me pay for it. Then you open up the app, and you're like, wait, where did they all go? Well, you hadn't been there in a long time. They took some of them away. You had it, but since you didn't use it, you lost it, right? It's probably not those truths, like there's a truth that we all like to hear, okay? God loves you. He's got an amazing plan for your life. Great. It's probably not even those truths that we want other people to hear. Like right now, you're going to listen to this through the lens of the person sitting next to you, and that's not what we're talking about. I think Jesus is talking about that word, that truth that lands on a really hard, tough place in your heart and your life, and it challenges you to change. Some of us come in here, okay, we're pre-resistant. It's some of you right now. Like you're here because you have to be. You're here because of the guilt that you grew up with, okay? You're here because she won't date you. Okay, yeah, it's good music, great people, I'm funny sometimes, but might as well be reading the dictionary, okay, because you're just not interested and you're not changing. And it might be that you turned it off on purpose and tuned it out completely. You tried it once, didn't work the way you thought it would. You've decided you don't need God or what he has to say. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with a person, either in my office or over a cup of coffee. Life is killing them. We talk about it. It's like, okay, well, listen, the next two decisions are obvious. Like the path is very clear. Like God's truth is going to lead you to these good places. And they walk away and go, okay, I'm not doing that. Truth hits your heart, okay, and it's gone. So the person, like the hard path, we would summarize it this way, they just ignore the truth. Like listen, this is going to happen to some of us after Easter. I'll just prepare you for it now. And then maybe you can come back after Easter and rejoin us in May sometime. But after Easter, we're going to jump into a short series on sexuality, okay? And some of us are going to get mad at Jesus. And some of us are going to get mad at me. He's a jerk. I knew I didn't like him. We're not going back there. We might leave. We might try another place. We'll see what's happening over there, and then maybe we'll come back someday. I don't know. But here's what's going to happen is mostly what will happen is you will miss your opportunity to embrace a truth that could potentially make your life better. When we ignore the truth, I mean, what happens? Some of us have lived this before, right? At best, nothing changes. Worst, things actually continue to get worse. And so the reason good things aren't growing, I'll bottom line it for us, the reason good things aren't growing in some of our lives is because we don't want them to. At least not through the truth, okay? That's the hard path, okay? And it hits your heart and it sits there and then it's gone. And Jesus goes on in verse 16, he says, okay, others are like seeds sown on rocky ground. By the way, like this story in itself could have been a whole series, and we're going to jam it into one message. Others are like seeds sown on rocky ground. We hear the word, so we got that. Immediately, they receive it with joy. Like maybe you remember the day you heard that God doesn't hate you, he actually loves you. That God could actually forgive you, right? You were thrilled. You're like, okay, I'm all in on that right there. And it wasn't half-hearted. It was authentic, and something clicked inside of you. You know what? Jesus actually offers a better way to live, and you were excited. And then things turn on this next word, right? But they have no root. Like it's short-lived, and see some distress, some persecution comes because of the word. They immediately fall away. And notice some of the words that Jesus is using in there, distress, okay, or that word's trouble, where you start to feel the squeeze in your life. He says fall away, there's a stumbling, or literally we're offended by something. And so this truth that I so quickly welcomed has started to cause some trouble, and I'm losing interest. And then the question we have is, okay, well, is it worth it at that point? I mean, some of us sat out back in January, and we had a goal for the year, and, a lot of us, hey, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to join the gym. No show of hands. You're just like, okay, I'm motivated, man. I got a good deal in the mail. Some of you are getting a better deal at the same gym I go to, and I've been there forever. I don't know how that happens, but the first of the year, you're like, I'm doing it. And you got some new gear for Christmas, and you're like, let's go, okay, new year, new me. You're committed, even excited. And then you show up at the gym, and what's happening in January? Everybody's at the gym, aren't they? It's crowded. Every piece of equipment's taken, but you're still committed, and it's all great. But over time, okay, you get further into the year, work gets a little bit busier, right? Someone scheduled a meeting at the time when you have reserved to go work out, but you're like, well, I can't miss it. And one day you overslept, and clearly you needed it, okay? And I'll hit it on the way home. Oh, some of us just had a moment of honesty, by the way, where we just said, you know what? I actually like Twinkies better than treadmills. There, I said it, okay? But listen, you were hot on it for a while, and it just, at some point, some other things just caused you to make a valued decision where you go, okay, this is just too much. It's not worth it. Listen, I did student ministry for years. It's one of the reasons why I pray for Dan every single day. And in a good way. A lot of times I would see teenagers go to church camp or we go to a summer conference, and man, it was exciting. Man, some of us in this room, I mean, we got motivated in a service at some time in the past, and we had a spiritual experience. Some of us maybe we're like, oh no, I need to be baptized, and it's got to be today. And there was enthusiasm, and there was just a lot of joy there. But sometimes, okay, a teenager who hasn't had time to actually grow some roots will come back from camp, and then school starts, and we get around our old friends again, and the feeling, it starts to fade a little bit. Listen, we all got to head back to work tomorrow after an amazing morning, don't we? And maybe, we baptized some people, and they had to deploy in the next month, and the truth just sometimes didn't have enough time to actually take root in their life. Jesus says, okay, when trouble comes, because of the word, okay, sometimes people fall away. I mean, this is the moment where you say, okay, listen, I didn't realize following Jesus meant that, right? I mean, I didn't know I was going to have to put everything about my life under his authority. I didn't know it was going to change how I do business, or maybe how I raise my kids, or I didn't know I was going to have to re-examine sexuality, or didn't know I was going to have to love those people or view money and handle it this way. So when God throws a truth, okay, and it lands on our heart like a rocky soil, many of us receive it, and it's exciting in the beginning, and then things happen that just cause some trouble. And so some of us will make a value decision because, and this is what it says about the soil, it just loses interest in truth. Right? For some of us, the truth actually gets in the way and makes life difficult. And listen, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's marriage, whether it's working in your yard, whether it's following Jesus, anytime something gets difficult, the tendency is we want to quit. He goes, okay, some of us are like that rocky soil. Others, verse 18, are we still excited? Are we good? Well, it's about to get really fun. 18, some of us are like seeds sown among thorns. These are the ones who hear the word, but the worries of this age, deceitfulness of wealth, desires for other things enter in and choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. So, okay, we're hearing some truth and we want to believe it, but Jesus says something else is actually growing right there alongside of it. And he mentions three things that actually choke out the truth in our life. The first he says is worry. Worry, by the way, just literally means to strangle, to choke, to divide your mind. So there is a worry that actually suffocates or overpowers or crowds out God's truth so that it doesn't actually produce what it's capable of producing in our life. Right? I mean, if you worry or you have some anxiety, like you know what can happen. It actually creates this illusion that we can try to control some outcomes in our life by just thinking about it more or stressing about it, right? And if you let anxiety grow in your heart, it will choke out your trust in God so that those good things can't grow. Jesus says a second thing, deceitfulness of wealth. Okay, he doesn't say money. Money doesn't choke truth out of our life. It's that money can be deceiving. Okay, it's that we have this tendency to believe that if we could just get a little bit more. Life would be better and, okay, I would feel secure. It's this temptation, okay, to believe that money can actually take care of us. That's the deceitfulness of wealth. And some of us have lived this before, like, to know that, okay, we thought that just getting a big pile and, it would protect us and it would solve our problems. Hey, it solves some problems, doesn't it? Can I get an amen? Okay. But there are some things it can't do, right? When your kids reach 18 and they leave your home and, they took off and they not only wandered away from here or from you, like they wandered away from values and they wandered away from faith. And you're like, man, there is no amount of money that can solve that. Right? Your doctor calls or he sits down with you and he's like, hey, listen, I got some bad news and we don't know this or that and this is not going to end well. And listen, no amount of money can actually help you in that moment, can it? You get a phone call, your kid's been in an accident. Listen, you're headed for a divorce and, man, you made a lot of money and you provided well, but he or she wanted some love or some time or some attention and you can't buy that. Right? There's nothing wrong with money. You just can't trust it to actually take care of you, and it will crowd out the truth of God in our life. And then Jesus mentions a third thing. He says, this is really big catch-all category, the desires we have for other things. It's those emotions, those feelings, that inner hunger that can easily spin out of control. That if I don't get that, if I don't have that, if I don't experience that, I'm going to die. So when you roll into work tomorrow, where's Bob? Oh, well, his wife wouldn't let him buy a motorcycle and he didn't get to play cards and drink with the guys. He's dead. That's what we're talking about. We tend to have desires at times. It's not in the notes. We tend to have desires at times that are out of control, right? Hey, I thought if I did this and if I got that, I'd be better off. And some of us got it, didn't we? And we did it, and then it was over. And we go, okay, well, that didn't help at all, and sometimes life actually got worse. There are some things, okay, Jesus says, that will choke the truth from going in our life. I mean, we moved into our house that we live in now. It was new at the time 5 years ago, about this time 5 years ago. And we had that fresh laid St. Augustine's grass, and it's like, man, this is amazing, and it looked great for quite a while. But I'm looking at it this week going, okay, man, there's a lot of other stuff growing in there now, too. And here's your understatement of the day. You all know what I did to actually make that happen. Nothing. Like, no work, no amount of effort. Like, those weeds, they just let it happen, and it's going to happen, right? And like a yard, a heart, or a life, when left uncared for, it gets crowded out by a lot of other things. And this might actually explain why some of us cannot get the traction that we want to have in our life, right? Why we don't seem to be making any progress on better living, because there's a competition that's currently taking place in your heart that revolves around who or what we're going to count on to take care of us. And Jesus said the thorny soil, this is what happens. It desires other things more than truth. Right, that there are things that will strangle our minds, they'll divide our attention, and eventually choke out the truth in our life. So, see if you can hang with me here or re-engage. Because right now, if you're a hard path kind of a person, you might not even be listening. If you're a rocky path person, you might not even be here, or you're going to be gone soon. This one right here might this is how I'm thinking about it. It might be our largest group, okay? And I can tell you that one of the areas this plays out on a large scale for our church, literally as a metric that I could look at, or someone in the office can tell me about, our collective generosity. Our giving, okay, literally our tithing, our financial gifts. I can look at that and I can pretty much quickly actually determine that many of us are hung up right here, okay? And this will probably make some of us mad. Take it up with Jesus, okay? In the fall, there's much less tension in the first service, okay. In the fall, they thought it was funny. In the fall, we spent 4 weeks in a series. We took the entire month of November in a series called In God We Trust. Some of you will remember it. Don't raise your hand if you were here. And the simple step out of that series, so simple, the simple step out of that series was, if you're currently not engaged in practicing generosity here and giving, here's your step. Do something. That's it. Just do something, okay? Anything. Get some skin in the game, right? Because listen, generosity is literally the antidote to much of what Jesus is talking about in this section about the thorns. And some of you did that. I don't know exactly who that was. I just know that some of us actually did that, and you tried it. And I bet if we could have a conversation, I believe you would say, you know what? We tried it, and God's actually proved himself to actually be faithful. Like we can trust him. For other people, that step was, okay, would you stretch yourself and see if you can be regular, be consistent, do some reoccurring giving, or maybe stretch yourself to do a little bit more. Or actually, would you take a step into tithing? Tithing doesn't mean giving, by the way. We've covered this before. It literally means 1/10. And you're like, well, how would I do that? I mean, I just tell you, as for me and my wife, Chris, every pay period for every $100 I get, the first 10, it gets set aside and we give it here. There's a lot of reasons why we do that. But listen, I'll tell you, one is that I believe in the mission of our church more than anything I've ever been a part of. I literally get to see it happen every single day. I believe it best honors God. I believe it best proves our trust in God. And it breaks that grip that we tend to have of desire in our life. And listen, for a lot of us, the only way to actually know if you're growing is to release it and direct your resources towards God and to do it first. And I'm just telling you, okay, it is provable, it is measurable, it is a tangible way to see that I think a large part of us are either ignoring truth, or you can see that it's actually producing something good in your life. And I'll tell you this much, I think I failed us. I really think I failed us in the last few years, and I'm going to correct that. And I know you're not excited about that. But we need to do some more teaching in this, and we need to explore some new ways to talk about this and keep giving you opportunities to grow. And how amazing, you could simply tap your phone to the back of the chair now, and it's going to take you to one of the options to give, and then you'll get in heaven. So do that today. That's not true. Don't do that. Are we good? Let's finish. Jesus finishes in verse 20. Those like seed sown, he's going to hold up the model, on good ground, they hear the word, they welcome it, and then it produces fruit, 30, 60, and 100 times what was sown. He said, look, it's possible to actually be ready and receptive and let the word have some time and to have some space and give it some nutrients, throw some water in there, add some sunshine, and it will actually grow and produce something amazing. It's possible for you to walk in here every week and go, okay, I am ready. God, what do you have for me? I'm open. I'm receptive. I may not like it, but man, let me just see what happens. I mean, there is something that you can actually see happening in your life when you're a good soil. So the first time when we first moved to North Carolina, and I'm driving out in the country, and I'm like, I've never seen cotton before, but that has to be cotton. How do you know? There's a little white part on the top of it. That's it. That's got to be cotton. There's evidence that something is growing. Good soil is the person who hears truth. We accept the truth, and we let it grow and produce results. Well, what kinds of things? Well, Jesus says fruit. I'll just give you a little taste of the fruit. If you fast forward in the book of Galatians, it says the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. Who couldn't use some of that in your life? And if you don't recognize it, let me just tell you, as someone who's on social media, we need it, okay? I mean, somehow in the last 48 hours, we all became experts in worldwide matters. I don't know how that happened. Foreign policy. Just don't accept my request if that's what you... Something's growing. right? And changing in your life, how you treat people, how you forgive, how you do parenting, how you do marriage, how you make decisions. Do you have more joy in your life? Are you a more patient person than you used to be? You know, the last few weeks, we actually looked at part of Jesus' really famous teaching, the Sermon on the Mount. And I kind of picture Jesus likely delivering that, okay, he's literally standing on the side of a hill, but he has to be talking to people who are in all these different categories, right? I mean, at least two people are going to be sitting next to each other who have been hearing the same truth as it pours out from Jesus' mouth. And when he's finished, okay, everybody's going to get up off the side of the hill and walk down. One person is going to walk down off of the hill, go back into their life, and actually put some of these things into practice, and they're going to end up with the life that they want. But the other person's actually going to go back home, go back to work, and nothing's going to be different. What's the difference? How is that possible? Well, Jesus closes that teaching with this simple nugget, that everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them, okay, that's the wise man or the woman who built his house on the rock. Listen, the path to the life that you want is hearing and doing. Acting, practicing. Listen, there are people who know the Bible really well. There are people in this church who know it better than I do. There's a lot of people who have a ton of information about Jesus. What Jesus is saying is, it's not what you know. It's not about the desire to have that life. It's literally whoever hears those words and then acts on those words. Okay, you're good soil and great things are being produced in your life when you act and follow the truth God's bringing to your life. And here's the great thing, and then I'll sit down, and you can decide if you were excited about this today. But listen, you don't have to stay in one soil forever. Like, how amazing is that? Like, you literally aren't just like stuck there because that's where you were or that's where you are. Just because you might be in one place today doesn't mean you have to live there. And this is what's so amazing to me is like, there's times when we say the same thing over and over year after year after year. And the person who sat right there and didn't move for 3 years, all of a sudden, I said the same thing I said 3 years ago, but today's the day they go, I believe that. Today's the day that I will choose if I'm going to be baptized. I mean, what you couldn't hear or receive last week, or some of us even last year, you may actually be ready and able to receive this week. Because maybe you've been driving down the road, or, you know, there's places we used to drive in North Carolina. I look over there, man, there's a tree growing out of the side of a rock. You ever seen that? It's shooting directly up out of a stone. It's amazing. How did that happen? I mean, I could barely get grass to grow in my own yard, but here's a tree coming up out of a rock. Listen, all that was actually needed was a very small opening for a seed to fall in there. So in the next few minutes, would you maybe, if you can, could you just try to crack open your heart just a little bit and see if a seed can't fall in there? And I want to ask you 3 questions that I think will determine your next step. Number 1, what truth have I been hearing? Okay, what truth have I been hearing? Because listen, I think it's true what Jesus says is God's been trying to throw some seed into your life. Do you know what it is? Did you just hear it today? Right? Was it last week? Was it maybe even last year? Like, is there a truth that you've been hearing over and over, maybe even from different people and in different places? And it's going to be different than the truth likely that's falling on the person next to you right now, and that's okay. And maybe none of the things you're hearing are new. My guess is you probably already know what it is. Some of us, though, even need to be open to the possibility that truth is different than what we thought it was going to be and maybe even hoped it would be, but it's still true. So what is it? What truth have you been hearing? Here's the second question. What do I need to do to welcome that truth into my life? I mean, if there's one thing Jesus communicates in this story, is that God doesn't force truth on us. Right? Just because he desires us to know it and just because we sit under it doesn't mean we will accept it and see the results. Like, you have to be ready to receive it. Hey, the farmer does his job, the seed does his job. Listen, the soil has to be prepared to receive it. And again, I believe God's truth's been falling all over your life, But if it's not going anywhere, listen, the hard truth is it's not God's fault or that the truth is bad. It's that your life is not receptive to it. And I get it, right? There's a reason why maybe some of us intentionally closed ourselves off to that in the past. I get it. But listen, life is never actually going to be what we want it to be unless we get God's truth in us, because only that is what has the power and the potential to change your life. See, there was a truth some of us heard at one time that if you had welcomed it into your life at that time, your life would be different and better right now, wouldn't it? So maybe part of welcoming truth into our life is to start by saying, okay, God, maybe just forgive me if I've been the one who ignored your word, or God, maybe come in and do some work, tear up these bad places in my heart. God, I've let other things compete for your attention in my life. Yes, I want your truth. So receive it, welcome it, embrace it. I want to see the power of it produce amazing things in my life. And then question 3 is this: what's a step of action I can take to produce fruit in my life? And maybe that's not worded correctly. I mean, obviously, God, through his Spirit, is the one making that change. But what's the step of action I can take to see fruit happen in my life? See, if there's a truth that you have heard and you're ready to welcome it, like, it will grow and produce results when you take one obedient choice, step, and decision at a time to put it into practice in your life. Say, well, what do you mean? Well, I mean, simply, when you hear the importance about loving your wife or respecting your husband, like, don't just listen to it, actually do it. When you hear the hard truth about loving your enemies, I mean, do it. When you hear the teaching about the danger of anger, or, man, the need to be a light in your world, then do it. When you hear about the power of prayer, the call to forgiveness, when you hear Jesus talk about worry or judging or love, like, don't just hear those things, do those things. And I would say every single one of us is probably one obedient step away from the truth we already know and seeing amazing things grow in our life. So listen, Jesus says where the soil is soft, the soil is deep, the soil is uncluttered, watch out. You're not going to believe what will actually happen. Like, if your heart's tender towards God and your devotion is deep and rooted, and if your life is uncluttered, then your growth is literally unstoppable. Like it just is. You're going to thrive. And you're going to have the kind of life you truly desire to have, what I think is a life literally beyond what most of us can even imagine. Because Jesus says, listen, that's how the word works in a person's heart in the kingdom. It just has a power of its own. So we're going to worship today. Maybe you'll just, man, I'm going to give him my very best today. Maybe to have a moment of prayer for some of you. Maybe to take communion in the back of the seat in front of you. We're going to baptize a couple of people today. That'll be an awesome thing to celebrate. Let me pray for us. God, today we say thank you over these words. God, we're praying that today our hearts have been open and receptive. God, there's truth that you have for us today, and it's not to point fingers. It's not to judge. It's literally there to make life better, like to become more good and godly people. God, I thank you that there's a way that we can actually see that happen in our life, that we can actually embrace it. God, you allow us time and space to grow into the people that you want to be us to be. God, today I pray that there's a truth that we can recognize. We would embrace it today and let it change our life to be more like yours. And as today, we're going to pray these things in your name. Amen.